Sparks. How are you, dude?
Drew, I'm doing well.
Welcome onto the show. It's a unique setup. Everyone watching is like, where are you and why did you change your studio again? We're in the Crown Plaza Hotel in Indianapolis at the National Eucharistic Congress, which is absolutely wild. We're literally filming this in a hotel lobby. There's 50,000 people out there all here for Jesus.
Yes.
You're here for Jesus.
I'm here for Jesus.
Man. So, okay, you're in what year of seminary?
So I'm going into my second theology, which means I have been in for 4 years, and I have 3 more years to go until priesthood.
That's a long haul, dude.
I know. And
Every
I've
time
already
I
done 5 years of engineering. It's like, it's
wow.
crazy. You'd think I would be an intellectual.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So you and I first met, I think, after Mass one time in St. Mary's.
Yeah.
I think you were serving, and I was like,
so.
Who's this? And then I see you at Mass in Cortez.
Yeah, we're my hometown. Yep.
Yeah, all the time. I'm there for Christmas normally, so we see the Christmas Mass, and I think this last Christmas you like flooded it with incense so thick I couldn't see it, and I was like, yes, let's go,
I love my
dude.
incense.
You make your own, right?
I've been dabbling. I've been.
Who makes their own incense? How do you how do you do this legitimately? I'm curious. How did you start this?
I'm still researching, right? Like, there's definitely different rules and regulations, but it's not as clear,
Sure.
My brother seminary and I were bored on a 5-day silent retreat up in the mountains. And we were like, oh, what would be really cool is if we could pick sap, because essentially frankincense is sap.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could pick sap from like different trees, and then we would like try them out. So we'd like smell them and try them, and then we'd mix them with like different, spices. Wow. And then, there's other seminarians who like buy incense and like try it out. So it's kind of like a little side hobby.
Side hustle.
Side hustle, yeah.
You got to pay for seminary somehow.
Exactly,
Awesome.
And so, anyways, it's been kind of fun. I love going out. There's juniper sap, I think is my favorite. I go out. There's tons of junipers in my area. So like I've been just going out randomly, picking those little sap off the trees.
Yeah, I think your sister was telling a story about like calling you one time, and she's like, "Where are you at?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm in the barn." And then she's like, "No, I'm in the barn." And you're like, I'm out making incense. Sorry.
Dang it, you called me out on it.
That's funny. Yeah, okay, so just to dive into your story a little bit, how did you? So you studied engineering for a while, and then now you find yourself in seminary for formation for the priesthood. How did that unfold?
Yeah. It's amazing how God works in people's lives. It's amazing how how some people are stubborn like me and don't
relatable, dude.
Yeah. And I there's a whole lot to it. So just to kind of get into it, grew up in Cortez, kind of grew up Catholic, but like didn't understand my faith that much. Went to college, fell away, started kind of just studying a lot, engineering, and didn't really focus on the faith. Had some just hard things in my life, were some close deaths, and ultimately I came down to I came back to my faith and I wanted to serve God, but I didn't know how. So I went off to work in construction for 3 years, and I was just this longing, this searching, and I thought I was going to be married, and I was really priesthood was on the mind, but I definitely was like, the devil has a sense of getting in there and saying like, no, you're not good enough. No, you don't have enough. And so there was this constant battle of like, I don't know enough. I'm not competent enough. It maybe is a thing for me, but eventually there was a great confidence boost in my faith, especially in Hawaii, especially when I was out in Molokai, Hawaii. There was a retreat, and at that retreat, it was just like, after going away from that experience of holiness, something about Molokai, it's just it's in the air, and I just knew I had to go. So the question is, where do I go? Do I study for Diocese of Honolulu? Do I go back home to Pueblo, Diocese Pueblo? Or do I...
Should have picked Honolulu, man.
I know,
Hawaii.
Right? I mean...
You could have just lived on the beach. Easiest vocation ever.
Right? It's amazing.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm super glad we get the actual weather and, the climate, different seasons.
Father Carl's going to watch this and be like, no, Drew.
No, don't try to convince him. Yeah, so Father Carl's my vocation director. If
We've had him on, yeah. Love Father Carl.
He was so instrumental to my vocation. Like witness of joyful priesthood.
He is like the
so
cool
good.
priest.
He is.
Do you know what I mean?
He's like young and just
Yeah.
like cool. He skateboards.
He was
Did you
talking
talk
about
that?
skateboarding
Yeah.
and playing guitar, and I'm like, oh, you were that kid at youth camp that everyone was like, oh, that's the cool guy. Yeah.
Totally. So, I mean, I'm maybe not as cool as him, but I definitely aspire to be. You know.
It's goals for sure.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
goals for sure.
And he's young and he's just like on fire, and that's what I want. But also, I really, there was a sense of bringing the truth of Christ, you know, in just this deep understanding of the faith, and the traditions of the faith are so important to like that I've experienced that I just want to bring to light, and I think bring to the priesthood. And so again, wherever God calls me, however God calls me to do it, I'm going to be obedient to Holy Mother Church. But I definitely want to, I just feel, I guess the last part of my vocation is in the sense of, after the retreat, I was like, I need to do something, but I need to go to seminary, but I don't want to, right? There was just this last kind of, you know, hanging on of just, I didn't want to. So my little sister was like, Michael, you need to make a decision. Like, you need to stop just wishy-washy. You met my sister, Rachel.
A force of a woman. I
Force
love
of a woman.
Rachel. I love Rachel.
She's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she's like, make a decision, Michael. You need to actually. And so I ran a marathon, and I was like, after that, I can do anything. I'm just going to go to seminary.
Do it. Yeah.
So,
thank you, Rachel.
thank you. Yes.
Just name dropping there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
totally.
no, that's cool. So what made the distinction or the decision between like Honolulu and Pueblo? You said that you wanted to be home in the weather and it's just familiar?
You know, it is interesting. I love talking about discernment, the discernment of spirits, the discernment of where is God calling us all. I think it comes down to like things that God has placed on our hearts, and I love. So I guess part of my story is the community in Hawaii was really great. Like I just I still love the people there. Like they have great friends. My godson's out there.
Oh, cool.
Young, you know. A good friend I met had a baby and asked me to be godfather. So, so anyways, yeah, I just be based off the community and the people. I would have loved to be in Honolulu, but there was again something just placed on my heart. There was a great need. I wanted to be a missionary kind of priest, and you know, there was kind of some sense of like I need to be on mission. And then when talking to Father Carl, he's like, Pueblo's a mission diocese, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's my home diocese.
It literally is the Wild West, dude.
Yeah.
It's so,
Dude, I'm rocking the cowboy boots.
Got the cowboy boots, represent. Yeah.
So there was just, again, placing that on my heart, recognizing like, okay, that desire that God, the good desire that God's given me can be fulfilled in a certain place, in a certain geographic place. And another thing too is, like there's all these orders out there. We're seeing so many different orders at the Eucharistic Congress. It's incredible.
It's incredible.
One of my favorite questions to ask the orders is, so what's your charism? You know? And the variety of answers is just incredible. So the question for me is, what's the charism of the diocesan priest? And it's kind of hard to answer because it's like, well, they don't really have a charism, right? They don't focus in on one aspect of the Christian life with super high focus intensity. But at the same time, they do, and I think there's something about the pastoral mode that diocesan priests take that their charism is pretty much pastoral. And so for some reason, that for me, I wanted to be with the people in a pastoral setting, be a father. You know, for the longest time, I think that was one of the things that kept me from the priesthood, was just wanting to be a father of kids. You know, I just love kids, and I want to help raise kids, right? And, you know, again, there's a joy. I have 3 nieces, and they're great. But I came to recognize, like, there was a peace and a joy in actually having spiritual children. And again, that's kind of a specific calling that kind of is more diocesan. Not that, you know, other priests don't have that. But I think it's definitely a sort of charism. Right.
You're taking care, like direct care of the souls of every parishioner that you have.
Your main job is to be a father. Franciscans, our main job to be with the poor. and they're fatherly or whatever, but it's not. I guess it's not the same as in the pastoral setting, or the parish setting.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You had kind of mentioned earlier one of the draws for you, and it seems like the focuses of your own mission as you go into this and as you're discerning this is going to be honoring some of the traditions of the church. And it seems that that's becoming a theme in like the younger priesthood, the younger priests and the younger seminarians. There seems to be, there's been like so many articles. I've even talked about them on this channel that, because a lot of people, like, they might look at how the church has been in the past 60 years or the past 30 years and go, we're kind of in a crisis. But I'm like, I think we're going to be okay. Because it seems like all the young guys I know, like yourself and all the other seminarians I've met, they're pretty rock solid. They're very orthodox. Like, they believe and uphold everything that the magisterium teaches. And that excites me. And I think even just for young people, there's this draw to some of the older traditions of the church, whether it's, whether it is the Latin Mass or whether it's certain prayers or whether it's, certain devotions, doing them in a more traditional way. What do you think is behind that for young people? Why is that happening with young people?
Honestly, I've pondered that a lot, and I can ponder it with personal experience, because I think I encountered a greater tradition in Hawaii. I encountered greater orthodoxy when in my just diving into the faith, and my grandmother asked me the same question, because she and I talked to her about the Latin Mass, and she's like, I don't understand Latin, I don't want it, right? The typical kind of like, it's not for me. I'm glad we did everything to change the church, right? Which I respect, At the same time, though, I was telling her, like, if there's the culture's telling us certain things, the culture's giving us a training of life, and the culture is directing young people towards a certain direction, and it's not truth. I can tell you that. It's not, like, even in the scientific mindset. I became an engineer. I was, public schools. I worked in construction for 3 years. I was very immersed in what the culture was telling me. Make money. You'll be satisfied, and there's just something unfulfilling about it. We all know this. Even my favorite saint, Saint Augustine. He just talks about how my heart is restless until it rests in thee, O God, right? It's this constant coming, desiring the Lord, but being unfulfilled. Monsignor Shea was talking about this morning. Nothing is like the Eucharist materially. It is infinitely greater than anything materially. So there's something that, like, when we see what the culture's saying, when we see what the church is offering, like, we want an authentic love for the Lord. And so it's an interesting thing for me. I recognize, like, there's a tendency at times to say, well, let's bring the culture into the church. Let's bring a little bit of, like, what the culture's offering and just, like, make it sound hip and nice and fun for the kids, And it's like, well, the culture does that way better than the Catholic Church could ever do.
Absolutely.
So it's like, why would you want to go, if the culture can do something amazing, why would you want to do that in the church? And so I think there's something, again, it's hard to completely describe, but there's something that the tradition of the Catholic Church offers that is very unique. And it's not trying to, almost syncretize or bring in a little bit of a culture.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. So, like, coming from Protestantism, there was this huge movement in the 60s and 70s and 80s to, they call it the seeker-sensitive movement, and it was to find people who were seeking, because they recognized that people were seeking something in the vat of nothingness that culture kind of offers now, and they wanted to make evangelical worship sensitive to the seeking, and so it looks like a rock concert and it feels comfortable, right? And I think that impulse can exist of, like, well, if we make this palatable, then people might come hang out for a while. But it's like, if I want the pizza party, I can get the pizza party without Jesus, and then I don't feel like they're sneaking him in the middle of it, right? But so Father Mike Schmitz actually in his press conference this morning said something along these lines. People were asking about evangelizing, especially in regards to the Eucharist. And he made a point where he said, you can bring someone to adoration, you can explain it to them, you can do all of that. He said, but there's something about the Mass that's kind of just for us. Does that make sense? Like in the early church, it was like you had to be fully initiated to be there for the mysteries, otherwise you would leave before the prayers of the people. And I think there is something special about that, not trying to make Mass and the liturgy palatable so that people come back, but actually focusing on our relationships with those people so that we can bring them into the sacred mysteries and give them, a full catechesis of what it is so they're initiated and can understand it. Otherwise, if you try to water down what the sacred mysteries are about, then everyone is, it's a detriment to everyone. But if we focus on like the mission of catechizing people and winning hearts for Jesus first, and then bring them in the proper way, they're going to get so much more out of it. And then all of us are approaching, quite literally the banquet of heaven. So
it's the meal. It's the heavenly meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what the beauty about it is. Like, it's very unique, and it's supposed to be unique. I mean, everything about the Mass is supposed to point to heaven, which is nothing that can compare to earth. So I think that's the beauty about it, is in a way that I feel like when I discovered a lot more traditional ways of practicing the faith, I was like, what did we do? Like, where did this go? Like, why is this, like, why don't we have it? Why didn't I learn it? It was just kind of like the sadness that, like, I didn't receive this. And I think we took for granted, but I also think that there's like, this is the tradition of the church has always been to like set it apart. And the things we do in the Mass are to set apart. And so I think that's the beauty of it for me is it's all oriented towards the truth. Everything that is done in the Mass is oriented towards Christ. Everything that's done or supposed to be done in the Mass is oriented towards us, being filled by heaven so that then we can go out. And I think that's the second part to it is there's humans deal in extremes often. And I think we can kind of go into the extreme of like, we need Jesus and the truth. But, Jesus said, be in the world, not of the world, And so there's this two-parted aspect that I really have found important. And that's where I think Hawaii, for me, was incredible. We had this great community, and it was very traditional Mass. But then afterwards, it was like, let's go hang out on the beach. Let's go surfing.
Let's have a beer.
Let's go to a paella, whatever, party. And it was just like, there was this beautiful community that accompanied the rigor of the truth of the church, right? And so there's this two-parted. If we have one without the other, if we just have the community, right? Bring community into Mass. Let's have community and kind of forget about like the importance of the truth that the tradition of the church has gifted us with, and just focus on community, which is important, we lose something. And on the flip side, if we focus on the truth, and this is where I kind of push back at some communities where it's like, you go and it's beautiful liturgies, incredible, the truth of the church is proclaimed, but you go and there's like no one outside of Mass talks to each other.
Oh no.
And you're like, well,
this is robotic.
Yeah, it's like, this is so sad. This is so unfulfilling, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's that two-part thing of we need truth, we need tradition, we need rigor, and I think I'm not trying to dog or point anyone out just specifically, but I think there's that balance that we're always trying to seek. Aristotle said virtue is in the middle, stands in the middle. So.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I think of it like, and I have to check myself with this too, because like it can't just be like, oh, this is the old way of doing it, so we're going to do it that way for the old way's sake. It has to be this, for me, it's always helpful to know the reason, certain practices developed or the reason that we do things. Because if you can explain it and understand it, then the heart of it's there. And then it's, oh yeah, I do want to receive Christ that way, because if that's really Jesus, that's more reverent. Or I do want to have music that's, appropriate to the setting of the liturgy, and Gregorian chant is the pride of place, right? Because it's appropriate and it's reverent and it's specifically designed for that. But that only comes from, it comes from like intellectual formation in a sense of like actually being explained why these things developed the way they are, or even just the essential components of the Mass, what those actually are. And then from there, having an encounter with it too, which the beauty of the faith is such that the liturgy, especially when done really well, is the perfect facilitator of that encounter. But then you come away from that transformed. I mean, you just had an encounter with Jesus Christ really and truly present in the sacrament. Yeah. So of course that's going to transform us. So then the hope is that as long as I'm not getting in the way of that, that other part, that transformation just naturally flows, right? That community naturally builds, because we're approaching the source and the summit of our faith. That should transform us, where all of that other stuff comes naturally. So I think what happens is we get in the way of that because we might grip too tightly to one element or hold too loosely to the whole thing, right? So, and that's the sad part, because it's like if we just let Jesus do his thing, it would all take care of itself. But then, you have to have people in the church too. And I'm the problem. So
yeah, it's a funny thing how Jesus allows us to participate even though we're in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's so generous. But
yeah. What is it in the Old Testament? The journey to the Promised Land is 11 days, and it took 40 years.
Right.
So the journey to properly implementing maybe some of the parts of the Second Vatican Council and having everyone on the same page is 60 years in. It could have taken a week, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Yeah. But it's
have to go through some mistakes and such. Yeah.
And but there's the silver linings, right? There's the way God uses that to. I wasn't in the church for a lot of that. I was Protestant until a couple of years ago, but it seems to me that some of the really, I guess you could say, detrimental things that happened that are, what I wouldn't say are because of the council, but they're auxiliary forces outside of the council exercising themselves, right?
Totally.
Those things lit the fire that's become this Congress in my mind. Does that make sense?
No, totally. Yeah. This Congress is a result of it's not a reaction, and right. I think a lot of the times we are reactionary, right? We this is happening, let's react to this that's happening out in the culture, and this Congress, it might seem like we're reacting against this, this survey that's coming out that 33% of Catholics believe in real presence. It's like, no, but this is a response to understanding how to properly share the love and the Eucharist and fill people up. That's what I love about some of these talks. They're just filling us and me up to go out and inspire and to share, and that's the beauty of it. It's this, okay, let's actually, just share Christ in the real presence, in his reality, and so often, again, we can kind of distance ourselves. Christ and our faith is one kind of part of our lives, and the rest is, over here. And it's like, no, Christ is real. He is present.
No, I think that's perfect. What I love too is the first revival session last night.
Yeah.
And this really encouraged me, and I wasn't afraid they were going to get it wrong, but I was like, there could be a reality in which you go to the Congress and the first revival session, someone comes out and is like, all right, let's do 10 points on why the Eucharist is real, and that was it. But no, we started with adoration.
It was so amazing. Surprising. Did most people know that?
I didn't know that was going to happen.
I think it was on the schedule. It was I was kneeling, and I was like, this is okay.
It was hard. Like a taste of heaven, man. There's 50,000 people all looking at Jesus, and it was dead silent in an arena with 50,000 people, which is insane to think about. The only thing I heard was babies crying, which is great.
This is incredible. I love that.
Yeah. So I was really pleased when they started with that, because I was like, that's obviously where you start.
Sure.
But it's we have 50,000 people who came here, and there's all these cool signs and cool events and cool vendors, but the thing that we started with was adoration. And I'm like, this is going to do something, because you can't have 50,000 people stare at Jesus for 30 minutes. It felt like that was pretty long. There was a couple songs, there's a couple prayers, there's a little bit of they processed in and out and sang hymns. But I was like, that's going to be the beginning of this. And it was hitting me hard. Us guys on the production team for the podcast were in the media section, and some of our friends, some gals from our parish were here, and we're like, we're glad that they're sitting in the general area, because we're all weeping over here. We can't let them see us cry. But I was really encouraged by that.
I was definitely, it was moving, and I there's something about kneeling on that hard,
my knees.
I'm like, it was tough, but it's and I'm like, I to kind of take back and say, okay, I came here to do what? To kneel on concrete to watch Jesus.
Amen. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I came here.
That's exactly why we're here.
That's exactly why I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, you know, there's a little bit of suffering in that, but that's, you know, entering into it. That's what we need to do to open our hearts, you know, and that's the beauty of it too. It's like, it's so often every day I'm like, okay, Jesus, enter into my heart because I am stubborn. You know how stubborn I am. You know, and
hey, if you can get a stubborn guy off in the right direction, that's a saint.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a saint.
God willing. So we're here, you know, making each other saints right now.
Hopefully, dude. Yeah, otherwise it's not going to go well for me, huh? Oh man, you know the other beautiful thing too about the first session is like they were doing praise music, and I just looked down. So and I was kind of like, I'll be honest, as a former Protestant, like that stuff, I was like, oh. Come on, man.
Sure, you reject praise music.
Yeah, I was like, we don't do that, you know. Yeah. But there is a place for it. And then last night I was looking out and I saw all of these beautiful nuns just going hard, and I was like, yeah, I'm a jerk, dude. This is the best. It was actually really nice because I knew a lot of the songs and I love a lot of the songs, and in a proper place like that, it was just beautiful. And then I looked down and I'm like, you know, this is Catholicity in a way. You know, Stephen and I have been joking that what Catholicism does is it takes your cool pagan thing and then just says that's ours now, and we're gonna redeem it for the kingdom, right? You know, like our art. You know, like if you go to Rome, like you can, like in Pompeii, I was there and I saw there was like a church to a pagan god in Pompeii, and I'm like, oh, the way they paint angels is the way we paint angels. But it's like, yeah, but we gave you the proper theology and then took it to the nines, right? So it's the same way with that. It's like, oh, well, praise music might not have come from us, but we can like baptize it and make it fully Catholic. You know, last night we're singing these awesome songs while all staring at Jesus. We're not staring at the band. We're not staring at some preacher. Like we're looking right at Christ in the Eucharist as this music is playing. And I was like, okay, this is. I mean,
that
cool.
sums up the resurrection. That sums up the cross and resurrection. You know, there's this something being taken away in the cross, but like to have it redeemed. And so it's like that
torture symbol becomes like everyone's necklace.
Like it's like that's Christianity. Like, boom, let's drop
all your suffering for greater good.
And I, you know, there was something beautiful about that. Is just like, okay, I'm not necessarily like, it doesn't move me like it moves others to listen to worship music. But again, there was something powerful to see, like, okay, there's 50,000 people here, and they're maybe not all moved. But I go back to like why, and I think, you know, worship music can open the heart. Totally. You know, the words, the frequencies. My engineering mind, you know, it's like the way that something goes in
the sound frequencies.
The sound frequencies open the mind and heart.
That's true.
To receive what Jesus is trying to offer. So and that's another thing to right order, right? You know, worship music, great, but it's oriented towards opening our minds and our hearts to receive the person right in front of us, who is Jesus Christ. And so I think that's the beauty about it too, is I kind of had to, you know, stomp my pride a little bit and say, like
we were all having that same thing. So because it's funny, like as coming from Protestantism, we're like, oh, this is worship music. It's praise music is a better title because like worship is sacrifice, right? Right. But then when you can put it in that in the proper context, and then you actually have the Eucharist there, you're like, oh, okay, now it hits a little harder, which was cool. So I get your newsletters to go in a completely different direction. Sure. And you have been biking a little bit, it seems. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So tell us what you've been up to.
I'm glad you got that.
My wife told me, she's like, if that's not the thumbnail for this video, then I don't know what you're doing, man. The picture that you
the one, you know. You know, so it's funny. Father Carl asked me, he's like, and I want you to do on mission somewhere this summer. So here's a couple options. The other option is biking for babies. And I'm not a bicyclist. I'm like, I've ridden a bike, I have a mountain bike, but I'm like, okay, what's this biking for babies? I've heard of it in Sikh and everything. And I was like, that sounds interesting. Well, come to find out, 600 miles in 6 days, raising money for pregnancy resource centers.
Amazing.
And just suffering for Christ.
Yep.
So I did that last week. Literally, I just got done on Saturday.
So you came into this exhausted as well.
I did, yeah.
Probably more exhausted than us. We were like,
Maybe.
we did a small conference. You rode a bike 600 miles.
Yeah, so
you should have ridden it here.
I was thinking about it. I was like, I was already in St. Louis,
Yeah.
What's another, 600 miles?
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Highly recommend it if anyone's a bicyclist. But I think the beauty about it too, kind of going back to our conversation about suffering's been on my mind. If it makes sense.
Now it makes sense. Yeah.
But like, the big thing that I've really been pondering is how to suffer with joy, and how to suffer in participation with the redemptive suffering of Christ on the cross. And that's been my theme. So ultimately, maybe the theme is joyful redemptive suffering, but there was, a lot of moving stories about women who are in crisis pregnancies. A lot of people we encountered who had kind of hardened hearts about the issue of culture of life, right? And so how do we open up that discussion, that conversation? And so Biking for Babies is just one way we have these bright yellow jerseys biking down the highways, and we had conversations with people. Sometimes people would come and there was this guy who came and just saw us biking, we have a support crew. I couldn't have done it without the support crew. And I did a lot of training too, just so people are aware. But
that's good.
Yeah, this guy came up and he's just like, for the babies, $100, and
amazing.
It's boom. And they were like, well, do you want to hear about it? No, just for the babies.
Just for the babies. Dude, that's all you need to know.
It was incredible. And so, I think I'm still processing it. But it was such a great experience, and even training, just to offer up and sit there and just be like, Lord, why am I doing this? This is crazy.
How did I end up here?
Why? Yeah. I started in March.
Wow.
Training.
The real question is, do you think you will continue cycling as a hobby now, or are you done with that forever?
That's a great question. Some people want to hear me say yes, and my body wants me to say no.
Yeah, totally.
But I enjoy it now a lot more, and I think there's a big bicycling culture at the seminary, and so we'll probably.
It's a good workout. I love it.
It is a good workout. I need to, continue doing something. So, I don't know if I'll do it, next year. I had to go on Spanish immersion next year.
Every other year type of thing. Maybe. 600 miles is quite the trek. Yeah.
That is quite a trek.
Wow.
But, we get that out there, and we just need to be, it's part of our faith that we need to fight for life. We need to be warriors for those who can't speak for themselves, right? We need to share the healing power of redemptive suffering, and it was actually really beautiful. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I went over to a friend's house in Pueblo, and this couple that I know, and this friend, his wife, gave birth on last Friday.
Oh, wow.
And it was my hardest day on the bike. And I didn't know that was they were, the kid was, Maggie was being born. But I was just, that day was just really hot and tired. Our leader, God bless him, was pushing us pretty hard, but I was just not a day where I just prayed. I was like, Lord, I don't know what this, suffering is for, but help someone in need through this suffering, right? Be a channel of grace towards someone who needs it, and I accept this just as you accepted the suffering on the cross. I'm going to enter into that. And apparently she had a really hard labor. There was actually a scare that the baby wasn't, they lost a heartbeat.
Oh,
and by the grace of God, everything came out great. She's a healthy baby,
Good.
And it was just it was this realization. I got to hold her, and it was like, man, in the divine mystery of all things, I don't know exactly. I'm not in control of the grace. God's in control. But it gave me hope to know that like maybe some of my suffering was helpful in those moments of her suffering, you know, and there was this kind of solidarity of suffering in that sense, that I can't understand, you know, but I also can appreciate and enter into a little bit more. So there's a lot
beautiful.
there.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And what a cool mission to be biking for and a thing to have done. Well, we're kind of getting close to time, but I know you run a podcast, so I figured I'd give you a chance to talk about it and plug it.
Absolutely. I've been really looking forward to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
But essentially, I go to school at St. John Vianney Theological Seminary in Denver, and long story short, I listened to the podcast before going to seminary. Really big fan, but all the podcast does is just listen to people's stories. Why do people go to seminary in this culture that, you know, is not conducive to seeking God?
Do you get weird looks when you're like, what do you do? You're like, oh, I'm studying to be a priest.
All the time.
They're like, what?
You're like, wait, what?
Why?
Like second look, you know, like, that's so weird. And most people give me like oh yeah, good for you. It makes you happy. But it's good. Like, yeah, no, the podcast is all directed towards like encouraging young men who are thinking about seminary, to just, you know, listen to a story that might be relatable and humanize it, you know, like we're all just guys at the seminary, just like everyone else, trying to figure things out, you know, maybe heard God's call and just trying to confirm it in the seminary. And then also friends of the seminary. So anyone who just wants to hear about seminary life and what it's about. So it's called the Sons of Ars, Ars with an A because we're the sons of John Vianney, the Ars. He's from Ars, France. And so if anyone's interested or knows any young man who is discerning and just needs a story to hear about seminary life, then yeah, we can be there for them.
Awesome. And what platform is that on?
So it's on a bunch of platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeart, and I need to get it on YouTube. I'm working on that.
Gotta get the visual component.
I'm trying to get the visual component. Yeah. So like I'm technically in charge, but like I'm trying to get more seminarians in part of it. So we only do one a month because we're busy and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys have a lot going on.
But we commit to, you know, at least one interview or, you know, topic about the seminary.
Cool.
So it's really fun.
I'll make sure to put that in the links below so people can check it out. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, double our, you know, listener count from 4 to 8.
It's not just mom anymore. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing, dude. I think it was a really good conversation. I'm sad it's shortcut because you have things to do and we gotta go do some things too. But hopefully this is the first of many. So
I hope so too. It's really a pleasure. So thank you.
Awesome. Cool. We'll see you all next time. Make sure to follow us with our daily recaps for the Eucharistic Congress and hit like and subscribe. And we'll see you later.
Thank you. That was really great.
That was fun.